good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Thanks for coming out. I pray that it will be worth your while as we study the Word of God. It should be a given, right, David? It should be a given. All right, as I get my face taped up here and turn on this little beauty. How's that? We're good? All right. Tonight we are in the book of Daniel. And we are in the 11th chapter. Last week we were supposed to have started going through it, but I just didn't feel right about it because I was not as prepared as I should be. And I don't know if that's a good thing for a pastor to admit or not, but that's the way it was. So tonight we begin a detailed study of chapter 11. This has got to be one of the most fascinating chapters in all of the Bible. This chapter contains one of the most specifically fulfilled prophecies of the Bible, predicting history over some 375 years. What year was it 375 years ago? Come on, somebody who does the math. Do it before I get my calculator up. 375 years ago is 2021 minus 375, 1646. What was going on in the 1600s? Reformation. Yeah, you're right. So if Martin Luther had prophesied that on August 22nd, 2021, there will be a group gathering in Peoria, Arizona. It would be pretty remarkable, wouldn't it? I mean, if we had that written down somewhere and we got that piece of paper and we just, our breath would be taken away, wouldn't it? Well, I hope your breath is taken away tonight because we are predicting history here from over 370 years and beyond, and beyond. This chapter is so specific that many critics who deny supernatural revelation have insisted that its history was written after the fact, fraudulently claiming to be prophecy. Interesting. If you Google this book and say, when was the book of Daniel written, you'll come up with a date of about 160 BC, which would be way after all the events he predicts happened. Okay. But according to Daniel and what we know from history, specifically since he says in verse 1 of chapter 11 that in the first year of Darius, we know when Darius was the king, and that was around 500 BC or so, give or take a few years. Now, archaeologists discovered manuscripts dating back to the time of Daniel, around 500 BC, that disprove their theory of a later date and shows that it was actually written probably when we think it was written. But they will not concede that, of course. And the reason they won't concede it is because the truth of it would scream at them that there is a God. We are accountable. And that Jesus Christ is who he says he is. Now, as we get into this, we're going to be looking at basically one or two cultures here, but the cultures are all from the eastern side of our world. And somebody asked once, well, how come we don't see anything in the Bible about the Mayans or the Aztecs or the Incas or any of those great civilizations that were part of the American continent? The Bible focuses on the civilizations that deal with the nation of Israel, because from the nation of Israel comes the Savior. And that's the only concern that it has. So it seems sort of indifferent to other cultures, which it's not politically correct. But at the same time, it's dealing with what is real. right? The nation that causes the most trouble on the earth is the nation of Israel. That's right. That little piece of land that you can fit 4 or 5 of them in the state of Arizona. In one day, you can drive from one end to the other end of Israel. So that is sort of the epicenter of all the spiritual warfare and the battle that goes on in our universe. And the epicenter of Israel would be the city of Jerusalem. That's right. And the epicenter of Jerusalem would be the Temple Mount. That's right. It's pinpointed on all of that. So these visions and insights regarding the future of the Persian and Greek empires are relevant because at some time, each of these empires attempted to wipe out the people of God. That's been a strategy of Satan from the beginning. Because if he wipes out the people of God, then he gets overtime. All right? He knows that his time is coming close. And the more he can do to disrupt the coming of the Messiah, he would do. And then the more that he can disrupt the fulfillment of prophecy, he will do. This is one of the reasons we believe the Jews have been so persecuted over the centuries, endlessly persecuted, is because the fulfillment of prophecy comes through them. Salvation, as Jesus said, is of the Jews. Okay? The Persian Empire tried to wipe out the Jewish people during the reign of Xerxes through a plot of a guy named Haman. All right? What book do we know Haman from and Xerxes? The book of Esther. That's right. Very good. Absolutely. And the Greek Empire tried to wipe out the Jewish people during the reign of Antiochus IV, when he attempted to kill every Jew who did not renounce their commitment to God and embrace Greek culture. And that's during the 400 years of silence between Malachi and Matthew. Okay? That's what was going on during that time. So that's why Daniel focuses in on this group of people. So let's get into verse 2 and talk about 4 future kings. Okay? I'll tell you the truth. By the way, who's I there? Do you guys remember? Who's talking? An angel. What was his name? Gabriel. That's right, Yolanda. Great. Gabriel says, I will tell you the truth. Behold, 3 more kings will arise in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than them all. And by his strength, through his riches, he shall stir up all against the realm of Greece. Okay. The angel's telling Daniel that there's going to be 3 more kings in Persia after Darius. Okay. Until a 4th one arises, and that 4th king is going to be strong, rich, and he's going to oppose the realm of Greece. That 4th rich, strong king was the Persian king Xerxes, when you count it from this prophecy to Xerxes. Okay, he was number 4. He was rich enough to afford to maintain a 5 million man army. That's a lot of guys, okay? And when they go on maneuvers, can you imagine the logistics of that thing? Of trying to keep them fed, keep them paid, and keep them on the battlefield? And you may have heard of a place called Thermopylae. How many of you have heard of Thermopylae? Yeah? How many of you have heard of the movie The 300? That was the Battle of Thermopylae, where the Spartans and the Grecian army withstood the hordes of the Persians. Xerxes had an army of, 5 million, okay, and they were going to invade Greece to take over Greece, and they came to this place called Thermopylae, and it was a narrow passage, which was sort of the gateway into Greece. And it was actually strategic by the Greeks to face them there, because you can only get so many men into a narrow space, right? But it's a crush of men, not, to say the least. It's a crush of men. Well, they kept coming at the Greeks with hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, thousands of thousands at a time, and 300 Spartans held them off for 3 days. 300, just 300. If you know anything about Spartan history, they were a culture that were bred for nothing but war. They trained daily with war. When you were born, they looked at you and they decided at birth whether or not you would be fit to be a warrior or not. And if the husband didn't feel like the baby was fit, they would just throw him off into a gulch and let them die of exposure and whatnot. That was just the way it was, okay? That was Spartan theology? No, that was just their ideology. That's how they operated. And they never lost a battle, but it should be noted that they would never fight a battle that they couldn't win, all right? They chose their fights very carefully. But they were very well regimented, very well disciplined. They had their techniques down, and Xerxes did not expect what he found when they went up against them. If it hadn't been for a Greek who betrayed his own country, they never would have lost the battle. Greek went over and for a certain amount of money said, hey guys, let me show you a passage around this. Where are they at? Thermopylae, yeah. And they win them, and they end up facing them front and back. And those 300 still stood them off for 3 days. But finally, there was the victory. But it was at a very, very high cost. This Xerxes also, at another time, tried to build a boat bridge across a strait, which is about 8 miles wide, between Hellespont and Sardis. It's the narrowest point between these two bodies of land. And he built these boats that go across it so his army could march across these boats, right? 5 million men over all of these boats to the other side. Storm came up and destroyed all the boats. So in his anger, not kidding here, you can Google it yourself, he had the sea whipped, okay? He had someone go out and whip the sea. I have no idea what that was like, all right? Now, the prophecy here is given in 522 BC, all right? That all happened, what I just told you, in 565 BC. That's 57 years after it was prophesied. Can you tell me what's going to happen to you in 57 years? I can tell you I will be here. That's a prophecy, I guarantee it, all right? If I'm here, it's not because I want to be, all right? But I just wanted you to keep, remember the timeline and how things are happening and how precise. And this is coming off of a conversation between an angel sitting on the bed of Daniel and saying, okay, let me talk to you about what's going to happen in the future. All right, verses 3 and 4, we see the rise now of a mighty king. Then a mighty king shall arise, and who shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will. And when he has arisen, his kingdom shall be broken up and divided toward the 4 winds of heaven, but not among his posterity, nor according to his dominion with which he ruled. For his kingdom shall be uprooted even for others besides these. Okay, it's kind of almost like he's talking in code there, right? The angel's telling Daniel of a mighty king that's going to have a great dominion, but his kingdom is not going to endure for very long. And it's going to be divided after his death into 4 kingdoms. All right? All right. What does history tell us? Well, Alexander the Great was the next big deal to come on the scene. All right? He came into power at 336 BC. That's 186 years after Daniel 11. And he was only 20 years old. How many of you know this story about Alexander the Great? He was something. He was from Macedonia, which is sort of northeast of Greece. And in 334 BC, he led the Macedonian army across that narrow strait that Xerxes tried to cross. And he went into northwest Turkey in one long military campaign. It lasted 11 years. He conquered the whole Persian Empire in 11 years, making Macedonia the largest, most powerful empire of the world. All right? Says he got really depressed after he did that because he didn't know what else to do. He'd conquered everything that there was to be conquered. So now what do I do now? They haven't invented Disneyland yet, so no. So his empire spanned from Greece to even to India, okay, the western borders of India. He died at 32. When did he start his campaigns? When he was 20. 12 years later, he's off the scene and he is gone. All right. Tradition says that he got drunk at a party in Babylon, caught pneumonia, and was dead. In verse 4, it says, his kingdom shall be broken up and divided to the four winds of heaven. After his death, it says, but not among his posterity, nor according to his dominion. History tells us that after Alexander's death, none of his descendants succeeded him. But it wasn't for lack of trying. He did leave three possible heirs. A half-brother named Philip, who was, the historians say, was mentally deficient. Okay, I'm not sure what that means, but all right, he just couldn't cut it. There was a son who was born after Alexander died, and he would have been the Alexander IV, and a legitimate son named Hercules. Not the Hercules that you're thinking of, okay, but just a son named Hercules. Now, the half-brother and the posthumous son were first designated as co-monarchs, but they're little, right? And so they can't rule. They appoint regents over them that are helping make the decisions. So you got three co-monarchs with three different regents. What do you think happened? Yeah, okay, it got to be a mess, okay? They were fighting against each other until they murdered all of the heirs, okay? And that sort of fulfills that part of verse 4 where it says not among his posterity. None of them would receive this kingdom, okay? So where's the kingdom going to go? Well, it's going to be divided to the four winds of heaven, the prophecy says. After the death of Alexander's possible heirs, four generals controlled the Greek Empire. But none of them had the same influence or power or authority that Alexander had. These guys were called the Diadochi. You ever heard of that before? The Diadochi? Okay, well now you have, okay? You can go home and put that into a conversation somewhere. You ever heard of the Diadochi? No, what is that? Some sort of new pastry or what? Anyway, they fought over the control of Alexander's empire, and they ended up dividing it up between themselves into four regions. There was Cassandra, who took the area of Macedonia and Greece. There was Lysimachi, who took the area of modern-day Turkey, and Ptolemy, which you may be familiar with that name, Ptolemy, who took Egypt to the south. As a matter of fact, he was very strategic. You guys ever play Monopoly? Okay. How many of you go after Park Place and Madison Avenue, all the real high places? That's what you go after first? Yeah. How many of you know you go for the cheap ones first, right? You go for the cheap ones first, and then you build from there. Well, that's what Ptolemy did. He took Egypt. And then Seleucus, the Seleucid, he was the founder of the Seleucid Empire. He took Asia Minor and Mesopotamia and Persia and Western India. He took the biggest swatch of everything. Now, from this point forward in the Word of God, the rest of this prophecy is going to focus on just two of the four inheritors of the kingdom, Ptolemy and Seleuci, or Seleucus, however you want to pronounce it. And the reason why these two are focused on is because, what do you think? Yeah, say it, Yolanda. That's right. That's right. So in the north, if you're Egypt, you're right here, and up to the north, you've got the Persian Empire and Syria, And then in the south, you have Egypt, and you're that neighbor in the middle who is being wrestled back and forth under the power of whoever is the power. That was the trade route. That was, you're just in the way. Can you imagine living between two houses that are fighting each other, lobbing Molotov cocktails at one another over your fence, and you're stuck in the middle between the two? Well, that's what it was like for Israel, because these guys were constantly fighting over the promised land. Constantly. So, verse 5, it says, the king of the south will grow strong, along with one of his princes, who will gain ascendancy over him and obtain dominion. His domain will be a great dominion indeed. All right. So, now when he gets in, he says the king of the south or the king of the north. When you hear king of the south, you're thinking Ptolemy and of Egypt, okay? And by the way, this is for free. You remember the story of Antony and Cleopatra, right? Yeah. She comes from that line in about 100 years, all right? Just saying. So now you can get excited, all right? And then in the north is, of course, the Seleucid Empire. And that's the king of the north. And that king's name was, what did I just say it was? Oh, Seleucus, okay? Seleucus, potato, tomato, whatever. All right. So verse 5 says, the king of the south, who is Ptolemy, will grow strong along with one of his princes, who will gain ascendancy over him and obtain dominion, and his domain will be a great dominion indeed. So that was fulfilled in Ptolemy Soter, one of Alexander's generals who took Egypt as his dominion. And he exerted his control over the Holy Land, and that ushered in the era of the Ptolemies. And this is at about 305 BC. This is 217 years after Daniel 11. And remember, this is all documented history. You can Google this yourself. Matter of fact, if you just want to go home and get on Google and do this whole thing for yourself, you're welcome to. And then the second general, Seleucus the Victor, rose to power and took dominion over the region of Syria and Persia and into India. And he became more powerful than Ptolemy. Okay, and that's the king of the north, and the Ptolemies were the kings of the south. You got that straight, right? And they fought for some 130 years. That's a long time to have an argument, all right? 130 years, and the stronger of the two always held dominion over the Holy Land, right? You can see them. What's that I hear? There's an army marching to us. Which direction is it coming from? It's coming from the south. Okay, let's get the Egyptian software or the Egyptian dinnerware out, and then the silver, right? Let's get my Egyptian coat. Wait a minute, there's another sound. What is it? Oh, it's an army from the north. All right, put that stuff away. Let's get out the dinnerware that honors the Persians, and this, you see what I'm saying here. It had to be tough, right? And I can't remember the traffic laws. Okay, what's the speed limit under the Ptolemies? Is it 15 miles an hour in the school zone or 20, 25? You see, you got a lot of issues there. No, Dennis, you have a lot of issues. Yeah, you're right. Okay, verse 6, a marriage between the families of the kings of the north and the south. After some years, they will form an alliance, and the daughter of the king of the south will come to the king of the north to carry out a peaceful arrangement. But she will not retain her position of power, and nor will he remain with his power. But she will be given up along with those who brought her in, and the one who sired her, as well as he who supported her in those times. All right, let me put this in plain English. Some years later, an alliance will be formed between the king of the north and the king of the south. The daughter of the king of the south will be given in marriage to the king of the north to secure the alliance. But she will lose her influence over him, and so will her father, and she will be abandoned along with her supporters. All right, are you ready to hear what history tells us about this? Yeah, was history this interesting when you were in high school? It's still not interesting, right? All right. There was a marriage between Antiochus II of the Seleucids and Bernice, the daughter of Ptolemy II, in 252 BC, which is 270 years after Daniel 11. There was peace for a time because of this marriage, and it was upset when Ptolemy II died. Remember now, he's the ruler of Egypt, right? And he's about 84 years old when he passes away. He's an old guy. And once he dies, Antiochus II puts away Bernice and took back his former wife, Laodicea. You see, that's the way the marriage was worked. If you guys want to have peace together, you marry my daughter. Now I have reason not to attack you because I got my daughter. I'll probably have my grandkids there too. So we don't want to trouble that. And you will be nice to them because if you hurt them, we're going to come after you, right? So to cause this marriage to come about, Antiochus divorces his wife, Laodicea. She, of course, she's not happy about it, right? But what can she do? You think you'd have no rights today, ladies? Back then, you had no rights either, all right? Just saying. Things don't change a lot, right? I'm sorry, that's the wrong thing to say, bad pastor, all right? So when Ptolemy died, Antiochus says, all right, deals off, and divorced Bernice and took his former wife back. Now remember, verse 6, it said what? She shall not retain the power of her authority. In other words, she's going to lose her influence. And who's her? Bernice, that's correct. And it says, neither he nor his authority shall stand. And that would be Antiochus II. Because history shows us that Laodicea, whatever her name is, didn't trust her husband, so she had him poisoned. All right? And that's the way you did with things back in the day. Then it says, she shall be given up with those who brought her. And that's referring back now to Bernice. After the murder of Antiochus II, Laodicea had Bernice, her attendants, and an infant son of Antiochus II, and Bernice killed. That's what you did. Had them all killed and assassinated. So after this reign of terror, Laodicea sent her son, Seleucus II, on the throne of the Syrian dominion. And that brings us to 246 BC. All right? That's 276 years after this conversation between Gabriel and Daniel. All right? Now, verse 7 through 9, we have from the south an army that defeats the kingdom of the north. This is going to go back and back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. From a branch of her roots, one shall arise in his place, who shall come with an army, enter the fortress of the king of the north, and deal with them and prevail. And he shall also carry their gods captive to Egypt, and their princes and their precious articles of silver and gold, and he shall continue more years than the king of the north. Also the king of the north shall come to the kingdom of the south, but shall return to his own land. Okay, these guys are going back and forth, right? They got the south, Egypt's army is advancing up to the north to fight the Persians and the Syrians, and then they come back. At one point in time, the Persians and Syrians, the Seleucids, had come into Egypt, and they sort of just robbed their temples, took all of their gold and silver. This is historic, and they hauled it off. Okay, well, that kind of ticked off the Egyptians, and I can't remember the king's name at the moment. Anyway, he got it together, and it's Ptolemy III. And he was the brother of Bernice, by the way, if you're keeping a scorecard, right? And that's the branch of her roots, by the way. And he's avenging the murder of his sister and also getting his stuff back, okay? And guess who's in the middle of all this? Israel, right? They got to put up with all of this. Now we're at 245 BC, all right? And it says, he shall continue more years than the king of the north. What does history tell us? Well, it tells us that Ptolemy III lived 3 years past Seleucus II. Ptolemy III died in 222 BC. Seleucus died in 225 BC. All right. Are you paying attention? I know this is dry as dust. It's like reading the fine print on your car insurance, okay? But it's fascinating to me because right now we've just covered some 300 years of recorded history. And everything that this angel said to Daniel came to pass exactly as he said it would. Now, again, if you are a critic of the Bible, you're not going to accept that, and you're not going to accept that this was written at the time that it says it was written. But if you're a believer, you know that this is true, and that should do something to your faith. It should do something for your faith. George Sweeting, he said, more than a fourth of the Bible is predictive prophecy. Approximately 1/3 of it is yet to be fulfilled. Both the Old and New Testaments are full of promises about the return of Jesus Christ. Over 1,800 references appear in the Old Testament, and 17 Old Testament books give prominence to this theme. Of the 260 chapters in the New Testament, there are more than 300 references to the Lord's return. 1 out of every 30 verses. 23 of the 27 New Testament books refer to this great event. 3 of the 4 other books are single chapter letters written to individuals concerning a particular subject. And the 4th is Galatians, which does imply Christ coming again. For every prophecy on the first coming of Christ, there are 8 on his second coming. If the prophecies of Daniel 11, and we've only gotten through about half of them, are so pinpointedly accurate, how much more sure should you be of the return of Jesus Christ? It could be in your lifetime. Could be. I'm kind of thinking it is. Okay. But it may be a while yet. But what we do know is that he is coming back. Now, here's the danger, though. Dwight Pentecost, you guys ever heard of this guy? Well, he's one of those things that pastors, read his commentaries and glean truths from the Bible. He was a longtime Dallas Seminary faculty member. He accepted an invitation to speak at a small church, and they asked him to speak on prophecy, and he said he would. But he also had a sermon on the loveliness of Christ, all right? On the historical events that led up to the death of Christ. And it wasn't anything about prophecy. He spoke for 5 nights, and the place was packed out as he spoke on prophecy. They even had loudspeakers outside so people could sit in the evening and at least hear what he was saying. But the night that he spoke on the loveliness of Christ, church wasn't even half full. Wasn't even half full. All the meetings were equally publicized, and the same kind of encouragement to attend was given. So what does that tell us? That there is an incredible inquisitive nature within us that has an itch to know about tomorrow or what tomorrow will bring. But there's a sort of a ho-hum feeling when we look back into history and see what yesterday left. Right? Do you understand? Turn to Luke 18:8. And look at the second half of this verse. That's the sentence I want to focus in on. He says, nevertheless, when the Son of Man comes, will he really find faith on the earth? When he returns the second time, will he find faith on the earth? That suggests that when he returns, the true faith will be comparatively rare, like in the days of Noah. when only 8 souls were saved. A lot of people are waiting until the end times to get saved. They've heard the gospel, they've heard the message, they know what it means to believe by faith, and they think they can wing it. They can just play the game, right? They can watch for the signs, and when it gets close, turn on a dime. What do you think the chances of that are for actually happening? No. You see, there's a spiritual dynamic that you're forgetting about. What happened to Pharaoh every time he said no? Hard is hard. Right? God may ratify what you're deciding to do today, where you come to the point where you can't believe. That'd be harsh, wouldn't it? That'd be very, very hard. What does it say to us who do believe and take it very seriously? Well, if he comes and he sees you, will he find faith in you? Well, you believe. I know that. I have no doubt about that. But what kind of belief do you hold? How powerful is it? How much of a passion is it within you? We're told that there are 2 great commandments, 2 great ones. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, and all your strength. And love your neighbor as you love yourself. That's pretty much a 24/7 commitment, isn't it? That takes all of you, everything you got. What did Jesus tell his parents when they come looking for him in the temple? Right? Where you been? Dude, Joe, chill. Right? I'm about my Father's work. All right? Turn to Ephesians 5. Verses 15 and 16. It says, "See then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time because the days are evil." All right, let me put that in plain English. Be careful how you live. Don't live like fools, but like those who are wise. Make most of every opportunity in these evil days. Every opportunity to what? Be a witness. In Acts 1:8 it says, "And you shall be my witnesses," right? Not maybe, you are a witness. Whether you're a good witness or a bad witness, you're a witness. And we are to witness with our life. What's your priorities? What's your master passion? What's it all about? Remember that song, What's It All About, Alfie? I don't remember what that movie was about, but I just remember the title. What is your life all about? What's your master passion? Will he find faith when he returns? He talks about, blessed is he who he sees serving the other servants when he returns, being busy about his word. Now understand this, okay? Because you can get into a works trip and this can turn all legal on you, and that would be wrong. You feel like, I got to do this out of obligation. No, what is in your heart to do? Let's say you want to be a nurse, okay? Let's say you want to be a medical missionary. Let's say you just don't want to get in an accident on the way home, all right? Whatever you are doing, you've surrendered your life completely to Jesus Christ. You love him with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. You love your neighbor as you love yourself. And your mind is being transformed as you study the Word of God. That means you're beginning to think like he thinks, which means that he is placing within you the desires of your heart. So whether you want to be a professional baseball player for the glory of God, or if you just want to be a mechanic for the glory of God, all of it is a place where God has put you. So you don't need to stress about it. And then as you go, you will be his witness. And sometimes it's just that your actions speak louder than your words. You are loving, you are kind, you're considerate, you watch your tongue, you don't gossip, you uplift everybody, you speak life into every situation. There's just something different about you, which hopefully will cause people to say, what are you smoking? Right? What's different about you? Why? And that gives you the opportunity to glorify God. And sometimes it means that you just being nudged by the Spirit. You just know, you know. I got to sit down and talk to Dana. Why? I don't know, man. I just think that maybe he's lost. And I got to sit down and I got to share Jesus with him. Well, what if he says to get lost? Well, okay, well, maybe I'll just witness to him by my lifestyle. But when the Lord has said, no, you need to speak up, you need to speak up. It may be that God calls you to stand for righteousness. To stand for righteousness, no matter the cost. You may be put into a position where you're going to have to either decide to fake it to make it, so that you're in a situation where you don't agree with the way their policies and how they're doing things. So you sort of go under the radar, become a secret agent for Christ, and you don't rock the boat. And then sometimes the Lord will say, no, you need to rock the boat. You need to stand for righteousness' sake. Like the teacher in Virginia. I don't know if you heard about that. The school board in Virginia that had a big ruckus and uproar over transgender rights. Voting in the school that, the district has mandated it, and this one particular school, the parents are saying, not in my school, you won't. Okay? And they had person after person after person after person declare, their stand. Well, there was one teacher who stood up and said, I can't do this. I'm lying to my kids to tell them that, you're 8 years old, but you're a boy, but you want to be a girl, so I'm going to call you a girl. I can't do that. And of course, they fired him. And then after they fired him, they fined him $1,000, rubbing salt into the wound. I think that that's the kind of persecution you and I are going to face in these last days. It just is, okay? I don't see it coming to the place where they're going to be taking our lives. They're going to be kicking down the doors and putting their jackboots on your throat, pointing a gun to your head, telling you to deny Christ, okay? Unless you're living in Afghanistan right now. But I do think that you're going to be marginalized. I do believe that Christians will not be allowed to go to certain schools because they'll deny you on the basis of your beliefs. Maybe you can lie on your application, fake it to make it so you can get the job, or stand for your convictions and say no, and they'll say, well, fine. Sweep streets, wash dishes, take the lower jobs. I think cancel culture is going to get more teeth. And they're going to come after you on all the social media, and they're going to wreck your life. All right? So, it's like, what was one of the slides that we saw? That prophecy wasn't given to scare you, but to prepare you. It's to prepare you that this is coming. All right? So, take the Emperor's New Groove attitude. You know what I'm talking about? Remember the scene? He and Paka, is that the guy's name? Tied to a log, going down the river, right, headed for the falls. And the Emperor says, let me guess, waterfall, right? Jagged rocks, certain death? Yeah. And what does he say? Bring it. Yeah. Because during that time, God has what we call sustaining grace. Sustaining grace. That will empower you and strengthen you and comfort you as you stand firm. And then you have all of us knuckleheads who will come around you and love on you and support you and help take care of you. That's what we do. That's what we do. So I'm not saying to go out and look for a fight. Don't worry, the fight will come to you. But I am saying to obey your conscience. The Spirit says, speak up, speak up. Spirit says, shut up, shut up. All right? You don't have to go looking for the fight. The fight will come to you. See that you're careful how you live. Don't live like fools, but like those who are wise, and make most of every opportunity because of the evil days. All right, we'll stop there for tonight, and then next week we'll finish up this chapter as much as I can. I don't know, maybe that was too much detail because I really could have gone deeper and deeper and deeper in it. There's so much there, so much there. So just want to encourage you, Jesus is returning. And as he is getting closer to come, look up because your redemption draws nigh. Matter of fact, tonight I think young adults, we're going to go out and do rapture drills, okay? All right, let's all stand.